Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Salted Street Studio. Welcome back to the show. And if you're new here, welcome to Beer Time with Big Bird, the show where I drink beer and then talk about it and then put it on the internet. Among other things, this is one of the cultural side quests of the Salted Streets podcast, coming at you live tomorrow right here on YouTube, right here on the Salted Streets channel, where we break down with my co-host Donovan, aka the original Salt of the Street. We break down all sorts of news and politics and current events and all the cultural implications thereof. But we're not going to get into that tonight. Tonight is all about beer, and as requested, this is the multiplayer collab episode. We talked about it a few weeks ago, a few shows ago, and it has time. The multiplayer collab is out, and I have two, I guess we'll go like that, count them, two multiplayer collabs from our local breweries right here in Washington State. And we're going to go ahead and do a little taste test, compare and contrast business between these two beers, and we'll see who reigns supreme throughout the multiplayer collab. But of course, it is a multiplayer collab, so nobody truly wins. It's really more subjective in what I personally like best. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in to today's beers and see what's on tap today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this is the multiplayer collab episode where we take a look at the aforementioned multiplayer collab IPA that is coming out in various breweries all throughout Washington State. This comes courtesy of the Washington State Brewers Guild. I better double check that. Yes, that's right. It's the Washington State Brewers Guild. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. I got two beers tonight. It's going to be fun. We'll go ahead and throw this one up right now. This is the multiplayer collab IPA from Silver City, and it is the only one at this point that is actually canned and labeled as per the Guild's guidelines here. The other multiplayer collab comes from this fantastic local brewery, Rainy Days. So we're going to go ahead and crack into both of these bad boys today, and we're going to do a little compare and contrast. We're going to do some sniff testing as per the usual, and we're going to do some tasting, and we'll really see which one is popping. As kind of a side note, and if you will, a little slight spoiler alert, I have actually already partaken in the Silver City's multiplayer collab IPA. But we're going to go ahead and pour this out now. It was my anniversary the other weekend, so me and my wife went to the actual brewery, and I decided to go ahead and pick one up and just give it a little taste while I was there. And as per the usual, fantastically terrible pour from yours truly. This is the Silver Cities. So we're going to go ahead and take a look. Let's note the haziness right off the bat. If you can't quite tell how hazy that is on camera, I apologize, but it's very light. I don't want to say golden, I want to say yellow. It's more of a yellowish color, but it is very, very hazy. This is a truly hazy IPA, which tells us a little bit about how it was made. It's probably unfiltered for the most part. They did one less filtering process throughout the deal. And because of the terrible pour, we're just going to let that hang out. Please note, these are both IPAs, so we're doing it in a proper IPA glass. So let's go ahead and try. We're going to crack open the Rainy Days multiplayer collab. I got very little info on this bad boy. I really don't know. I swung by the brewery today after work, picked me up a crowler, which if this can looks very, very giant in my giant hands, it's because it is big. Crowler has become one of the most common forms of small volume beer transport in our area. It's beaten out the smaller growlers that exist, and it's really convenient, and it's really awesome to have. So this, right off the bat, again, another horrible pour for me. But you can already tell, look how clear this is in comparison to the Silver City. So we've got a hazy IPA right here, and we've got, the color in this one it's pretty clear. I'm not gonna lie here, and that doesn't That doesn't say anything bad about the beer. I want to preface that. Doesn't mean the beer is any less than just because it's clear. All right, we're not going to be, comparing and contrasting the colors of the beer in any negative fashion, because that's just not okay in my book. It does tell us a lot about the type of beer that's inside. The hazy IPA is going to be a different type of beer than a more clear IPA. So once again, hazy, Silver City, clear, comes from our friends over at Rainy Days. So let's go ahead and start off with the typical sniffer test. We're going to test the aroma. I'm going to smell it right off the bat. Oh, it's incredibly hoppy on the nose. Slightly fruity, mostly citrus. But nothing like punches right in the gut. This is a very approachable and friendly smelling beer. If you were to pour this out and give it to somebody, they're not going to hesitate and go, whoa, what is that you're giving me? Don't give me that. That's super bitter. Oh, it smells like a dream, honestly. It's real mild, yet fruity enough. It entices me, makes my mouth water, if you couldn't tell. And I just want to jump into it. But we're not going to do that yet. We're going to go ahead and do the sniffer test on the Rainy Days Collab IPA, which already you could tell the head on this is not hanging out, which already tells you something, because again, this is a hazy IPA, so that head is probably going to be more protein packed, and it's going to stick around for a lot longer than a clearer beer like the Rainy Days. But let's go ahead and take a sniff. Ooh, again, fruity, but not too fruity. I'm not getting as much citrus in this one. Getting more malty flavors on the nose, which is very interesting. So for those of you who have not watched the multiplayer collab video, where I did not drink a multiplayer collab, but I definitely talked about it, the way this whole thing works is the Washington Brewers Guild gets together every year, and they do a kind of a collaborative beer where the guild puts out like a base beer recipe. So you're talking very simply a malt, hop, and possibly a yeast profile. And then from there, the brewers can feel free to get creative and do whatever they want, as long as it falls within, at least this year, the IPA category. And just on the aroma factor alone, both of these are IPAs. I can smell that in them when you sniff them. The hops are, boom, nice and forward. There's a lot of variety in the hops, so I'm assuming that they do not use the same type of hops in this situation. And now I'm just dying here. Let's go ahead and dive right into the first beer. We're going to go ahead and do the Silver City first. Like I said before, I did have this the end of May over at the actual brewery when me and my wife were there for our anniversary. So I already have had this beer before, but we're going to taste it. I'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll get into the other one, and we'll see how the two compare. Oh, yeah. Right off the bat, this is like a very refreshing type of IPA. You don't get too much bitterness right off the bat, so it encourages you to keep drinking more. Yeah, there's a lot of proteins floating around. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. Probably not. But there is a ton of proteins floating around in here. The longer I have in the glass, the more it's settling. There is some kind of rising up with the carbonation, falling back down. Very protein heavy, which is very typical in a hazy IPA. But very good. Not a punch of bitterness right off the bat, which I really, really appreciate. A lot of times brewers, when they get into the IPA world, if they're not that familiar with the IPAs, they can go pretty heavy on those the hop acids that make it incredibly bitter, and this does not have that. It is a smooth, mild ride into hazy IPA town, and I do not hate it. I'm a huge fan. Now, even more exciting, I feel like I should have had a palate cleanser. Oh well, maybe I'll just take it. Oh wait, we have some water. I'll do a little palate cleanser just to be fair. There we go. Good old H2O. Now, let's dive into rainy days. I just picked this up this afternoon. Never tried it. Never smelled it. No, nothing up until today. Yeah, again, the nice malty back on that aroma. It's got me excited. I like an IPA that is not too hop forward on the aroma. Oh, warmer. That's the first thing that comes to me. This is much more malt forward than the hazy IPA coming from Silver City. Oh no, this is okay. I don't want to just like give this thing the gold medal today just yet, but as of right now, I want to. It's a much smoother drink when you take it. The malt forward IPA is something I think is lost on most modern IPA brewers because there's so much focus on the hops and there's so much focus on the bitterness factor. You kind of forget sometimes that when you're drinking a really intense IPA that it still is a beer at the end of the day, which is mostly malt with a little bit of hops and some yeast. And when you lose out on that really complex maltiness that comes with the beer, you kind of lose out on the oomph that the beer has. I mean, that's the whole body of the beer. That's what gives its alcohol content. It's what gives it gives beer everything essentially that makes it beer. The hops is almost like a sidecar additive when it comes to beer. It's very important, cannot be understated, but when you're talking about an IPA, I feel like a lot of modern brewers don't put as much effort into the malt recipe as they do the hops recipe. And the Rainy Days it's got a really strong balanced malt. It still tastes like beer, but you can't lose the hops. When you drink this, you know you're drinking a beer, and you know because of the hops you're drinking an IPA. Versus the Silver City, you get the hops right off the back, and then you just kind of like hang out for the malt, and then you hang out for the rest of the beer situation to hit your palate, and then you're like, oh yeah, that was a good beer. And it is a good beer. I don't want to cast shade on it, but yeah, it's much more tart. We'll put it that way. It's a very tart beer when you drink it, which a lot of IPA should be tart. But then when I switch back over to the Rainy Days, warm, comforting, inviting, not too much hops, but the hops rides long with the malt, which I think is important. It's not you're riding the hops and I'm not going to make an analogy. The Rainy Days IPA, I feel, really just strikes the perfect balance between hops and malt flavors. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. If anything, it's not as hop forward as a lot of regional IPAs here. And I don't hate that. I do not hate that. I just want to emphasize. But in the Pacific Northwest, most of the focus, I feel like, is on the hop profiles and all the hops you can get in there. And the flavor profile of the actual IPA itself is more reliant on the hops profile in your everyday drinking IPAs. And the Silver City is definitely hop forward. Malt forward, hop forward. Cheers. Let's drink again. Yeah, just all around, like a really smooth, enjoyable beverage when you're talking about it. At the end of the day, if you're coming home from work and you want to crack open a beer, relax, it is Friday. Shout out Friday. Everybody loves Friday, unless you're one of those people that works like retail or cooking, and then it's like, hey, the kickoff to the busy week. In which case, drink an IPA anyways, because, you're about to start your work week. Let's get some hops in there. But this is an end of the night closer. That's what the Silver City is. It's hop forward enough to remind you even if you've been drinking a few beers already, that this is an IPA and it cannot be trifled with. No, I mean, I don't know which one is better. I don't know if there's such a thing as better, to be honest. It's so subjective. Oh, man. How often do you get to, like, have a good excuse to double fist 2 IPAs in one go? In 2 IPA glasses, I might add. Hashtag pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know if one's better than the other. I know subjectively I like the Rainy Days a little better, at least right now. Because of kind of like that warm, comforting feeling. You do get a lot of IPA, or like the hops on the back end. But it's not so forward that it's the main event. This is still, there's a malt recipe in here that needs to be trifled with. There really is. And I would love to talk to the brewer and find out what kind of malt profile they built off of this thing. I know there was a base malt that was suggested or given by the Washington Brewers Guild, but like, it shouldn't be this malt forward in my mind if this is the standard. Now, an IPA could still be considered an IPA if it has a relatively low IBU. I don't remember offhand. I'd have to look it up what the minimum requirement is on the IBU levels to even be classified as an IPA. And I feel like no matter which way you slice it, the Rainy Day still cuts at the IPA classification level. But it's just not so in your face that it detracts from the malt. And that's probably why I'm kind of liking the Rainy Days more than the Silver City multiplayer collab. Yeah. No, I mean, and like I said before, this is all subjective. This is my own personal palates, my own personal taste. I like a beer that still tastes like beer, if that makes sense. I like a lot of malt forward notes. I like to kind of like weed out the complexities in the malts. I mean, the malt profile alone, when you're talking about beer, is very, very, very important, because it's like, it's your foundation of what the beer is. The malt, for those of you who don't know, it's been a while since we broke this down, is the malted barley, the roasted barley that it serves as the base substance. It provides the sugar, the starches, and the proteins that you need to make a beer. And after that, you add the hops to it, and then it becomes a new kind of amalgamation of ingredients, and that's when the beer becomes whole. But when you look at the German lager world, or look at the Belgian world, the hops are a minuscule player in the overall taste of the beer. It really only becomes like the main event when you're talking about IPAs, the India Pale Ales, because the IPAs, to be classified as IPA, you need a higher IBU, which is the International Bitterness Unit. I'm fairly sure, fact check me on that one, but I'm fairly sure the International Bitterness Unit is the IBUs. That's how they measure the bitterness in a beer. If you get a beer that has an IBU of 100, and then you have a beer next to it that has an IBU of 20, the IBUs of 20 is going to taste real malt forward. You're not going to really taste much of the hops at all. And then you have an IPA, which is, off the top of my head, don't judge me for this, I want to say it's like between 40 plus. We'll put it that way. I don't know how low it goes, but you can get pretty low in the IBUs and still be classified as an IPA. But anyways, let's get back to these two beers. Rainy Days, Silver City. I like the fact that Silver City went hazy. It seems to be kind of in vogue these days, and you can certainly tell when you compare the two. One's hazy, one is not hazy at all. That means this has probably gone through another filtering process than the hazy IPA. And honestly, I almost talked to the brewer today, because I saw him when I went to the brewery, but, you know, they had just opened, do his beer in hell. He's running around trying to make stuff happen. He's a brewer, bro. They don't stop working. I mean, that's everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to start a brewery, and then all I'll be able to do is like sit back and drink beer all day, and life will just be beer. I was gonna say gravy, but it doesn't really work when you're talking about a brewery, and that's not the fact. I mean, these brewers work hard in hell to try to make their dream possible, and any dream worth achieving is worth working for, I think, as we all should know. And I just didn't want to bother him, so he was very busy. I'm going to try to get back there on a regular basis at this point. Maybe I'll catch up with him at some time and talk to him about the multiplayer collab a little bit and just see what kind of went into the process and of what he was thinking. When you have a base malt to go off of and then you just say, okay, creative freedom, go. Give me an IPA on the back end. There's a lot of room in there, man. You could do all sorts of things with an IPA. And what he did was just fantastic. Man, I wish I could tell him that today, but brother busy, I understand it. I'll catch up with you next time. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of generally leave it at that. Silver City, obviously, I've talked a lot about multiple Silver City beers on this show, and I have nothing bad to say about Silver City at all. But when it comes to the multiplayer collab, in my subjective personal taste, I'm going to go with Rainy Days 100% all the way. You guys just nailed this bad boy. Yeah, I want to know what's going on in the malt profile. I want to know what kind of hops they use and what proportions, because that is just an easy drinking IPA. You don't get the bitterness kind of pits that back up in the back of the jaw and the back of the throat as like most heavy IPAs do. And it's just a pleasure to drink. I mean, I started a new job this week, FYI. It's been a pretty cool deal. I'll talk about it on the Salt of the Streets podcast tomorrow at noon Pacific Standard Time. If you're not local to the area, it's noon West Coast time, so be sure to check out that right here at the Salt of the Streets channel tomorrow at noon. Did I say tomorrow at noon? Right here on the channel? Because I'll say it again if you need. Right here, noon, tomorrow. Salt of the Streets channel. Episode 127. It's finally popping. Co-host is officially kind of... I mean, you're never done raising a kid, but the baby has popped out. Miss Reason Phillips, and she is adorable. And everybody's adapting well, and we're going to get back onto the schedule as usual. So we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow during the podcast. So if you're at all interested in that or any kind of current events, politics, stuff like that, we talk about that on the main podcast. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Join us in the live chat when we go live on YouTube at noon. It'll be a good deal. It's a good time. We'll be drinking more beers. I got all sorts of new beers. We always drink beers on the podcast. It's a really fun time. We talk about the beers that we have when we're on there. So make sure, if you're at all interested in any of that, be sure to tune in tomorrow at noon. And other than that, next week, next Friday, I have another beer in mind. And I have I've been talking with Donovan a little bit about the future of the beer show. And no spoilers yet, obviously, but I have a dream for the show, and as you might imagine, this ain't it. I enjoy doing this, and we're going to keep doing this because it's a fun way to interact. But I want to do something bigger with the beer show. We're gonna go big at some point here real soon. So be sure to keep following us here at Salt of the Streets. Be sure to follow me on my social media. I am at Big Bird Offie on all the social medias that you can imagine, except for TikTok, because TikTok. And my co-host, he's not here today, obviously, because this is kind of my deal here on the beer show, but he is at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Be sure to check him out. He's a big deal. Best friend in the entire world. I can't even I can't speak highly enough of this guy. So be sure to check him out there. Be sure to check out the rest of our content here on the Salt of the Streets YouTube channel. We've got more coming, and we keep putting out content all the time. Monday through Friday, you've got content, and then every other Saturday live on YouTube, you've got the actual Salt of the Streets podcast in its full glory. So be sure to check that out. As for me, I've got 2 open beers here that I need to finish, and there's no way I can finish them and finish editing this video before it needs to go up tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and call it right here. Ding, ding, ding. Reign supreme. Rainy Days brings home the gold medal when it comes to the multiplayer collab. Clash? The multiplayer collab clash? That's a mouthful, but between these 2 bad boys, boom! Rainy Days takes the gold. And I will say this, the Rainy Days did not have the cans. Now, I'm not 100% sure how the whole deal works. I know when we talked about the multiplayer collab before, the Washington Brewers Guild had arranged a deal with multiple... Excuse me. Problem with drinking beer on a beer show is you can generally burp a lot. The multiplayer collab, they sent out a base recipe for people to work off of. They also sent out the awesome design work for the can. I'll get it real close. It's kind of like an 8-bit like fighter situation going on here. It's a very, very cool deal. And Rainy Days did have the posters up, but they had not canned and labeled any of their multiplayer collab yet. So it was just available through Crowler, or if you were going big, you can get a growler of it and do the whole thing. But I went ahead and just stuck with the Crowler because with a beer this good, I'm not trying to drink a whole growler, man. That's just too much of a good thing. That'd be the only slightly negative thing I might have to say about what they have going on. But even then, like, I understand what's going on. I'm not going to really judge anybody for lack of a can at this point. Trying to build up, especially when you're talking about microbrews. So let's talk about this for a second. When it comes to microbreweries, there's kind of a lot of expectations had about the way a microbrew should operate. If there's a local brewery in your town, you may expect to find their beers at your local grocery stores, whether it's a big chain national type of deal like Safeway or Albertsons or something like that, or even a more local. Out here we have a local chain called Red Apples that are all privately owned small-time grocery stores. A lot of craft brews found at the local Red Apple, which is a really, really nice deal. But when you factor in what it takes to go from brewing beer that you can throw into kegs and ship out to local bars and restaurants compared to the ability to can and label and ship out to, say, supermarkets or local retailers, there's a whole separate process involved. So I can't judge Rainy Days for not doing that, because it is such a, it's like a baseline difference in manufacturing beer. There's a world of difference between brewing beer, throwing it in kegs, and selling it to the public, to brewing beer and canning it and selling it to distributors. There's a massive difference in that, and I can't imagine what the cost undertaking would be. So I'm not gonna knock them for that. What we're talking about here is the actual beer itself, and the making of the beer, the brewing of the beer, is the important factor here. And obviously, look at the levels are pretty close. I'm actually kind of surprised about that. If anything, Silver City needs another sip. I don't want to call it a pity sip, but might be kind of a pity sip. Oh, still good, man. If you're more of a hop forward IPA type person, Silver City might be where you land. If you're like me and like a really malt forward beer, Rainy Days, they'll hook you up. Yeah, big fan. So, anyways, other than that, I'm Big Bird Offie. This has been Beer Time with Big Bird. I love you all. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. If you are at all slightly interested in politics, the cultural goings on of the world, current events, or anything that might fall underneath that umbrella, please stay tuned right here tomorrow at noon Pacific time. And me and Donovan will be kicking off episode 127, and we've got a whole slew of stuff on deck. We've got everything from some local stories, including some very strange Supreme Court rulings of the state of Washington. And on top of that, we're going to be talking about the slightly controversial draft opinion of the Roe v. Wade that came out I don't know, probably about a month ago now. We're going to be talking about that and then the fallout thereof. And, of course, we're going to be talking about guns and the gun kind of, gun restrictions, gun control, the gun legislation that may or may not be coming forth after a number of mass shootings have occurred over the last few weeks. We're going to be talking about that. And then, of course, we always have our fantastic grab bag segment, fan favorite, I might add, which is a lot of more local stories that we'll kind of break, or not local stories, it's smaller stories that we'll break down and kind of have fun with. So, anyways, hope to see you tomorrow at noon, right here, Salt Streets YouTube. Until then, I feel like I'm going to grab the Rainy Days beer. I'm going to say cheers. I hope you really, really enjoy your weekend, and I really, really hope to see you tomorrow, right back here in the Salt Streets channel for episode 127. We'll see you then. Cheers, everybody.